Man, I had a few things I've eaten by myself to do a little video about. First of all, yeah, I'm well aware of the Secret Service over in Colombia trying to get with prostitutes on taxpayer money. I mean, these are supposed to be the most prestigious people, most qualified individual. They're going to protect their president. These guys are on site before the president even gets there, and they're having sex with prostitutes at yours and my expense. Boy, that's fantastic. Proud to be an American, fight for the rights of every man. Hulk Hogan, where are you at, baby? Theme song. So, on a side note, I'd like to read this to you from Infowars.com. Alex Jones. And you may recall here recently, Iceland has not only told the bankers to go pound sand, as we talked about previously over the last 2 years, they want the Icelandic people to pay the European banks that lost all these people's money. We want your people to pay in other words, we want you to do a too big to fail bailout like America and we did in the UK. And the Iceland President reserves the right to veto things, kind of like ours. In both times they tried to pass legislation through the parliament or their Congress, and it got to his desk. Nope. Vetoed. Have a nice day. So the politicians were trying to get this done. Everyone else is doing it. Come on, we got to do it. And you know they were getting paid off a couple of dollars for campaign contributions, I'm sure. But the president said, no, can't do it. And he said, we're going to go to a nationwide vote. And both times, massively failed. No, not going to happen. We're not voting. We're not doing it. So the people spoke. True democracy. So let me go ahead and read this to you, straight from Infowars. And recently, from what I understand, all this bad banker debt regarding mortgages that these Icelander people have to deal with, can you say Jubilee? Gone. Not going to pay it. But that's not what this particular article is about. The president of Iceland sits in his study drinking tea from an immaculate china set. Quote, if a collapse in the financial sector can bring one of the most stable and secure democracies and political structures to its knees, as has happened in Iceland, then what could it do in countries that have less stable democratic and political history? Namely, the US and Britain and the UK. So he's saying a financial collapse that they experienced with the banking sector at fault, if that could bring the most stable and secure democracy to their land, and what he's saying is imagine what it could do for other places. Much bigger banking sectors, right? Much bigger democracies like America and the UK. The tiny country is unique not only in its stunning geography but also in its open democracy. This democracy was pivotal in the choice to let 3 giant banks fail during the financial crisis. For the president there, the crisis of 2008 was personal. Once the darling of the left wing, he worked as finance minister for several years before he became president of the country in 1996, a largely ceremonial role that he's inhabited ever since. Like many in the country, he was once a cheerleader for Iceland's financial sector, privatized at the start of the 21st century, and the sudden collapse was a painful reminder that Iceland was a small, isolated place. Now, of course, most headlines we see about Iceland seem positive. And he links a couple. Iceland is repaying its IMF loans early. Another one, unemployment is down. Another one, growth is above average. Huh, that's funny. We don't hear any of those stories in our area, do we? Huh, that's funny. The streets of, I don't even know how to pronounce that, seem calm and happy. Other countries, of course, haven't been so lucky. The crisis remains front page news in Greece, Italy, and now recently Spain. As I've already mentioned to you a bunch of times, it would go to Spain. Here it is, just like we all said. Countries that followed a very different response from Iceland's. In other words, they followed the American and UK response. Bail out the banks, put on the taxpayers' shoulders, have a nice day. So that president of Iceland argues that his country's strength came from recognizing the problem was not just an economic and financial challenge, but a profound social, political, and even judicial challenge. And that was quoted. After the crisis, the country held a full judicial investigation and went against the prevailing economic orthodoxies of the American, European, and IMF model. In other words, bail everybody out, all of our buddies. They went against that. He says that he likes to think that the IMF learned more from Iceland during this time than vice versa. No, I don't think the IMF learned anything. The IMF's sole purpose is to do what their banker friends tell them. But nonetheless, I appreciate your comment, and you guys certainly did the right thing. A key example of this approach is Iceland's refusal to pump money into failed banks. The decision was controversial at the time, but now looks increasingly wise. Quote, I have never understood the argument why a private bank or financial fund is somehow better for the well-being and future of the economy than the industrial sector, the IT sector, or the creative sector, or even the manufacturing sector, for example. I would agree. There is, of course, another aspect. A tricky situation arose when the UK and Holland demanded money for their citizens' depleted iSave accounts, and Iceland refused. The incident sparked a major diplomatic scuffle, with Iceland refusing to pay out and the UK even using, quote, anti-terrorism legislation against Iceland. For the president of Iceland, it's also a personal aspect. He was head of state, though he did not control the government. In effect, his position was more like being an elected Queen of England than being Barack Obama. But constitutionally, he had the right to veto government legislation, though it had never been used by his office previously. He decided to block government legislation to pay back the UK twice. Both times, that legislation went to a nationwide vote, and both times, as I mentioned, it failed. Quote, it was absolutely very tough indeed, he says. Every big financial institution, both in Europe and in my own country, was against me. And there were powerful forces, both in Iceland and Europe, that thought my decision was absolutely crazy. Yeah, the club, the bankers, they do think your decision's crazy. Just like a decision by God or Jesus Christ would look crazy to the devil or Satan. Yeah, you could expect that. The decision was hugely controversial and remains a sore spot in relations. For him, it was a matter of history. Quote, what is our Quote, what is our primary legacy to countries and nations in modern times, he asks. Europe is and should be more about democracy than about financial markets. Based with this choice, it was in the end clear that I had to choose democracy. What this guy is saying is basically what Barack Obama led his campaign on. So you have to be careful, because when people like this stand up and say, I'm for you, I know this and that, hopefully they're true to their word. But most people are not, including President Barack Obama, including Bush before him, including Clinton before him, including Papa Bush before him, etc., etc., etc. They tell you what their campaign managers and bozos tell them to say, and then they go back on their word the entire time. Well, I'm elected. You can't unelect me. You can't unelect me based on things I said in my campaign trail. I didn't sign anything in writing, did I? No. Well, go pound sand. And that's basically what they tell us. But this guy, he's true to his word. Actions speak louder than words. And by their deeds, you shall know them. By their actions, you shall know them. Not their words, not what they tell you you want to hear, but what they actually do and show you. This guy is spot on. He also blames the British for their role, specifically Gordon Brown, another puppet. You know who Gordon Brown is, of course, by whom he believes Iceland is owed an apology. I would agree too. The president likens the situation to the Falklands War, adding that it was a great offense that one of the most peace-loving countries in the world, a founding member of NATO, a strong ally of Britain during the Second World War, was put together on a list with Al-Qaeda and the Taliban on the official list of terrorist organizations. They put Iceland on the list because they wouldn't pay the banker money back. Isn't that incredible? Iceland essentially had no choice, he said. Quote, if you take the relative size of the Icelandic economy and the British economy, and you transfer over to the British economy the sum that the British government was asking the Icelandic taxpayers to be responsible for due to the failure of this private bank, it would have been equal to asking the British taxpayer to be responsible for 800 billion or 1.2 trillion in our money, American dollars, for a failed bank, British bank in Spain and Italy and Greece. That's what he's comparing that to. And here's another one from which InfoWars quotes from Business Insider, Adam Taylor. To that Iceland president's credit, the ICE save debts, that bank debts, are likely to be settled upon using money from the estate of Landesbanki. He believes that if the UK and Holland had waited a while before, there would have been no conflict. After 2008, Icelandic relations with Europe may have been strained. It was during a dinner with foreign diplomats that year that the president of Iceland reportedly said, quote, "The North Atlantic is important to Scandinavia, the US, and Britain. This is a fact these countries now seem to ignore. Then Iceland should rather get some new friends. I also can't help but notice," and this is not a quote, I'm just finishing this article. I also can't help but notice that one of the reception rooms in the presidential residence contains prominent photos of their president with Vladimir Putin and Hu Jintao, and not a single photo, to my eyes at least, of a European leader. As a matter of fact, I don't think he said American leader either. Or he would have probably mentioned it, wouldn't you think? No Barack Obama standing next to him, hoping change. No, can't change that bank structure, the economic situation. No, we can't change that. We got to keep bailing them out. So the Iceland president dismisses the quote, going on to say that his problem isn't Europe, but the European and American banking system. He says Iceland's lesson is that, quote, if you want your economy to excel in the 21st century, a big banking sector, even a very successful banking sector, is bad news. Well, that's a hell of a quote. Even a very successful banking sector is bad news. You know why? Because a very successful banking sector equals very indebted people in a very bad economy that will soon follow very rapidly. Quote, you could even argue that the bigger the banking sector is, the worse the news is for your economy. Well, that's fine. That's just what I was kind of just saying. He adds, later blaming the huge growth of Iceland's banking sector on the prevailing European banking philosophy and incompetent rating agencies. Yeah. And Mr. President, it is not that these rating agencies are incompetent. They are these people worked for banks, usually prior, put into those positions in the rating agencies so that their buddies' banks always look good. So it's not incompetent, although it looks incompetent, it's not. It's part of their plan, it's part of their structure. Instead, the country is hoping to use not only its creative and intellectual capital, now freed from the finance industry, but also its unique geographical situation. Quote, the Arctic has become one of the most crucial regions for the future of the world, both in terms of economy, trade, and climate and health, he says, adding that he feels Iceland, a member of the Arctic Council, has a 10-year head start on the issue, which is now attracting the interest of the EU, China, and South Korea, countries with no geographical claim on the area. This future is something that the Iceland president clearly sees himself as part of. He had originally told the country that he would not run for president again. He had been in office for 16 years and felt he could work better without the day-to-day stress. However, after an online petition circulating managed to get 30,000 signatures last month, he decided to run for a 5th term. The elections will be held in June, and you know what? I'm so happy the people stood up and said, your actions showed us you believe in democracy, our democracy. We want you. We don't want you leaving because the next guy's going to promise us the same things you're promising us now, and he's going to revert on those things. He'll guarantee to reverse. Please, sir, here's petition showing you how bad we want you. Can you imagine that? Wow. While other candidates have come forward, that 15% of the population who have already signed up would likely give that president reason. Olafur is his name, Olafur, would give Olafur reason to believe he will win. He says it was the public will of Iceland that caused him to change his mind. If a large part of the nation wants me to continue, I will bow to that public will, he says. But if that turns out to not be the case, that's also fine with me. But it is the case. This is the kind of guy you need running a country, any country. But again, you have to be careful because everybody knows, how do I get elected? How do I get elected? And it's just like a test. How do I pass the test? It doesn't matter how much you know what's in that test. All you need to know, give me a damn cheat sheet, what is in that test so I can pass it. And then a year later, we're going to quiz you on it again. We're going to give you the same test, and you're going to fail miserably. Because all you're trained to do nowadays is, how do I succeed in this thing in front of me, this obstacle? Oh, that's a test? I don't understand how to do that or that or that or that. Doesn't matter. Here's how you answer it. Done. Okay, great. Hey, I passed the test. And that's what they do in front of us. Hey, I passed the test. The people wanted me. Well, that's because you promised them more pensions. You promised them less government. You promised them open government, less wars, removing the troops, killing the banking sector, toning it down, and then you got in office. I passed the test. Now that I passed the test, I'm in a position of power. They can't remove me. Who wants to pay off old Barack Obama or John McCain? If it was John McCain, gotta be fair. Democrat, Republican, right? I want to upset any bozos out there who follow that crap as if it really matters. So they get in power, and then, hey, and they said the same thing that a true patriot, a true human being, kind human being, would say. So who do I vote for? They're both essentially saying the same thing. They're going to fix the same problem, practically the same ways even. Who do I vote for? Well, who do you see the most? Well, I see this guy named Romney everywhere I go. The news, papers, TV. I don't hear much about this guy. I think I'm going to go with him. And that's how they win. Just like Ron Paul. Ron Paul's telling you all the right things. These guys, even though they can't stand, they don't have a fighting chance against Ron Paul as far as policies go, and what Ron Paul would do if he took office. They still have the balls to argue against Ron Paul's policies now, and for some reason still get all this attention from the media and the people and everything else. So, all I can say is this guy is what I call a true hero. And I think I'm going to change that song, Proud to be an American. I'm going to redo that song and call it Proud to be an Icelander. Proud to be an Icelander. Fight for the rights, not the bankers. Now that's going to be Jay Snip 4's greatest hits. So, anyways, I know it's dark out. I had to do a video. I just bought they call it a mini refrigerator, right? A mini fridge for my job, my office. I'm going to try to save some money eating out, because I do eat out a lot. And if I buy this thing, they're willing to deliver it from the next city over, actually. If it's $40, pay them $20 more, they'll bring it to me. Man, no problem. I'll meet you over at my job. They're dropping it off, $60. In this economy, you got to find those deals. You've got to find those deals. I think that's going to be it for now. She still hasn't texted me yet when she was about to get on 60. So I think I'm going to do another video about the sheeple.